What on earth is Turbo Trevnoir? Welcome back everyone to more from the Sable Eyes. I'm Mitch, and today we're going to take a look at a deck that was brought to us by World Champion Henry Brand. He sent it through the old spicy DMs, and we got to look at Turbo Trevnoir. This deck is really interesting, and that shows off the strength of that Trevenant Dusknoir card really well. Hopefully, we can get ourselves going with Night Watch as early as turn 2. So we'll see how we go. We could potentially get there even if we go second. Right? We get the attack at first, turn going second. It's possible. We'll check out the list and see how it's done. Here we have it, a tight list, a compact list, but a good one nonetheless. We look at our main attacker here, Trevenant and Dusknoir Tag Team GX with Night Watch, 150 damage for 3 Psychic Energy. We choose 2 cards from our opponent's hand and we shuffle them back into their deck. So the idea of this list is to get our opponent's hand size down as low as possible, as soon as possible, and then use Night Watch as early as possible to start drawing our opponent out of the game. If we can manage to do that, we can just hit for 150 multiple turns in a row, and we should be alright to eventually get the W. But to do that, we're going to need a couple of extra things to happen. We need to draw lots of cards in the early game. We're going to try and do that with a 4-3 Mismagius line. Mysterious Message is a really strong ability, except it does have the downside of giving your opponent a prize. Now, that's normally not super great, but in our instance, it actually is relatively good because we play copies of Reset Stamp. We can play one of our 3 copies of Reset Stamp to reduce our opponent's hand size down as low as 4 or maybe even 3, depending on how many Mismagius we get off early. And then, because we're on 3 or 4, our opponent's on 3 or 4 prizes, not only do they have a small hand, but we also have access to Beast Ring. We play 3 copies of this card so that we can accelerate energy onto one of our 2 Beast Pokemon, the first one being Pheromosa Buzzwole, and the second being Naganadel Guzzlord. Now, both of these are really decent options. Obviously, we're not going to be able to attack with any of them. Our energy is not going to be consistent to allow us to do that, but the key thing for us is that they have Ultra Beast up in the top right hand corner. That means we can Beast Ring to them and get ourselves into our Trevnoirs as quickly as possible with cards like Tag Switch, which we've got 3 copies of, and that ought to get us into the right position as early as possible. Now, it doesn't really matter what tag team Pokemon you play to try and power them up, as long as they are Ultra Beasts. We have to have Ultra Beasts. We obviously don't want to commit to one type. If we do, then all Fairy Pokemon will just completely destroy our tag teams if we have to play them down, and again, Fire Pokemon, etc. So it doesn't really matter what the attacks are, but it does matter that we have a couple to Beast Ring to. Our only other Pokemon is 1 copy of Dedenne, so we're going to draw a bunch of cards with that. But the rest of the deck is about getting this combo off as soon as possible. We have 4 copies of Quick Ball, not only to get ourselves Trevenant Dusknoir, but also to get ourselves one of our 4 Misdreavus. We need to get those into play as quickly as possible so that we can use our 4 copies of Dusk Stone to evolve them into Mismagius and start drawing cards and giving our opponents prizes. We also have 1 copy of Mysterious Treasure. That might be able to find ourselves a Trevnoir, maybe even a Naganadel Guzzlord as well. That wouldn't be the end of the world. We've got 1 copy of Energy Spinner so that we can find energy with Clay, which we have as one of our supporters. We'll talk about that in a minute. We've got Ordinary Rod to be able to shuffle Pokemon and energy back into the deck. And we've got Pokégear to try and get into our supporters. We've got Acrobike. Acrobike's a good consistency card just to draw an extra couple. Of course, we also have Switch, and I've mentioned the rest of these cards. It's really good, and you're going to have easy access to them because our main draw supporter is Clay. So we're drawing cards with Misdreavus, we're drawing items and trainers with Clay. We need to make sure that we get as many of those items in play as quickly as possible. When you think about it, all of our key ones are items. We need Quick Balls, we need Reset Stamps, we need Beast Rings, we need Dusk Stones, we need Tag Switch. So there's all of these different cards that we're going to need to get going, and Clay finds all of them. That's really good for us. Now, We're obviously going to be behind on prizes as well, so Lieutenant Surge's Strategy is an obvious choice. We've got 3 copies of this card in the deck. That means that we can play 2 Clays a turn, which is quite ridiculous. And if we don't need to find other cards, then we can play one of our 2 copies of Jessie and James. Both players discard 2 cards from their hand. Our opponent discards first. And that means if we go down to 4 cards in hand for our opponent, maybe we've given up 2 prizes, reset stamped, we can play Jessie and James, and then use Trevenant Dusknoir with Night Watch to get rid of the rest of their hand. The rest of the deck is made up of 7 Psychic Energy, so we can get those attached as quickly as possible. This list is a hell of a lot of fun. I'm not going to say it's the most consistent thing in the world, but it can be quite frustrating for your opponent. And if the combo goes off, you get those attacks, then you're going to be able to reduce your opponent to doing nothing for a long stretch of time. What we'll do is we'll take it out into the ladder, we'll see if we can hit the combo. Whether we win the game or not is another idea, but hey, we may as well give it a red hot crack and we'll see how we go. Alright, now that we've found ourselves a game, the key is going to be, can we get ourselves into that Trevnoir as early as turn 1? We lost the coin flip, so if we go second here, which it's looking like we probably will, we might actually be able to get that combo off on our first turn of the game. This hand isn't particularly strong, so we're probably going to have to find a basic here, which is unfortunate. But yeah, I'm actually really confident here that we're actually going to be able to find some pretty solid cards, as long as our opponent actually plays down their hand at some point. They've got a Pokemon, they're just sitting patiently waiting. As long as we get ourselves a decent hand with one of our basics, we should be okay here. We'll wait and see how we go off of this mulligan though. Clicking done and moving on. Yeah, we've got the Trevnoir, which is good. We've got a lot of good things here. We've got a Mysterious Treasure, we've got a Beast Ring, a Dusk Stone, and a Mismagius in hand. Now the hand Mismagius is not super great, but being able to Mysterious Treasure for the Misdreavus and then Dusk Stone straight away is the first step to get us into that combo. Our opponent actually has the pleasure of playing Whimsicott-GX here, so now not only are we going to need to make sure that we get our attacks as early as possible, we're going to need to make sure that we're flipping the right coin as well, and they've got the Wondrous Labyrinth, so now we need 4 energy on our Trevnoir to be able to attack. At this stage, maybe we might be asking a little much to try and get that first turn attack here. We'll use Acrobike and see what we grab. I think probably the Clay is the smartest idea. We could get another energy, but we don't really need it. I think it's better to just grab the Clay. We've got an energy in hand, so we can use that down the track. We are going to discard, I think, probably the Pokégear. That seems like the logical option. We'll grab a Misdreavus, and then we can Dusk Stone into a Mismagius. It's not the worst thing to do. We only have 2 Mismagius in the deck though, with 1 in hand. We'll be able to attach to this Trevnoir, and then we can pop the Mysterious Message, or maybe we can even use Clay first. We might do that actually, just to draw into a few items here. None of these are super great though. Maybe we should have just popped that Mismagius straight away. Although, you know, we did discard a couple of extra ones. We might like double switch just to thin our hand out a little bit. Maybe use Pokégear as well. We can grab another Clay for next turn. That's good. And then we can use Mismagius now. We'll draw a few cards, not as many as we would have, but that's okay. And look at that, we've actually managed to find a Misdreavus, which we can just place straight down here. Means we can put that down. We've got Mismagius the turn after, Beast Ring, Clay, Lieutenant Surge. We've got a lot of good cards that we can work with, as well as that Tag Switch. So as long as we find ourselves a basic with the find a tag team, an Ultra Beast next turn, we will be able to at least get our starting attack off. But one of our Nagalords is in the discard already, so we might want to try and find that Buzzwole Pheromosa. It's a good thing that the Nagalord actually got discarded there, because I was talking about it before. If it's stuck on the bench against Whimsicott-GX, it could be a bit of a liability. Whimsicott-GX obviously having that fluffy cotton ability means that if we flip heads, we do 0 damage. And we want to flip tails as frequently as possible, please. A Fairy Charm ability coming down onto this Whimsicott now. We can see there's another Cottony on the bench, but the key thing for us here is it doesn't look like there's any Fairy energy, so the chances of being able to Toy Box here are pretty low. That means Porygon probably won't turn into Porygon Z either. And the fact that our opponent's sitting there waiting, maybe means that they've not got quite enough. And there's the pass. We've actually got a Reset Stamp here as well, so we can play down Mismagius. I think we play this Pokégear. We can grab a Clay. That sounds pretty good to me. I'm happy with that. We can get rid of the. We can play the Lieutenant Surge. We're almost definitely going to play that because we are behind. We can use the Mysterious Message. We'll only grab a couple of cards here, Beast Ring and an Energy. But we will be able now to play Clay twice if we have to. And we've got double Beast Ring and Tag Switch and an Energy, so looking pretty solid here. I think we get Clay before we Reset Stamp though. We don't realistically need to worry about the Reset Stamp just yet. The key thing is we just don't want to discard that Buzzwole Pheromosa. Now we've got double Tag Switch. We've got ourselves a Misdreavus as well. We could potentially grab that. Could be useful down the track. We've got the Dusk Stone as well, but there's already 3 Mismagius in the discard pile. We might as well just play the Dusk Stone, get rid of it. We don't realistically need it. And then we can just use Acro Bike again. Find Energy Spinner and Energy. We are running out of energies here to Beast Ring. If we discard a couple more, we might be in a bit of trouble. I saw the Quick Ball there. There was 1 energy, but there wasn't a what do you call it? A Buzz Pheromosa there. So that's fantastic. So we're going to grab that out. We'll discard the Dusk Stone. Realistically, we don't really need it. And then we can use our Beast Ring. We're going to be good to go. We could potentially have used the Dusk Stone in combination with the Ordinary Rod there, but that's okay. We're going to Beast Ring. Oh, we don't actually have any energy left, so we are going to need to play the Ordinary Rod. So we'll do both. It's okay. This is fine. We will chuck back in, I think, probably like the Dedenne and a Mismagius. Maybe the Naganadel. No, the Dedenne. Oh, maybe. Oh, God, this is a tough choice. Realistically, we don't need anything else. We're just going to put the Mismagius back in. Okay, that was a little bit of a misplay there. I will accept that. That's a bit of an issue. But we've got the double Beast Ring, so that's fine. We'll be able to tag switch those energies onto the Trevnoir. And we're not sort of worried about that stadium because we can just manually attach an energy from hand. We've got another Acro Bike. We can play Reset Stamp. We've got a whole bunch of things that we can do here. But realistically, we might just Pale Moon. We'll discard that energy from the hand and force our opponent to get a switch. Could be a free way to deal with getting through Fluffy Cotton, and that means that we might also be able to find ourselves another Mismagius, or a Mismagius, sorry, to reduce our opponent's hand down to 3. So when we do start night watching, even if we aren't taking knockouts, we can then at least reduce the hand size down to 1. So that seems relatively good to me. I'm not unhappy with this. Obviously, if they switch, it'll be frustrating, but you know, sometimes it doesn't happen. A little Twitch emote down the bottom corner there. We actually recorded this one live on Twitch. So if you're interested in seeing those streams when they do go live, then jump on twitch.tv/thesableeyes and you can follow us up there. We stream every now and then. It's not always happening, but you know, it's happening often enough. There is the retreat there, so that Whimsicott lives to fight another day, but this Cottony might not. I'd be happy with that. There's a pass, so we're looking pretty solid, and we top deck the Mismagius here. That's pretty impressive. I think we just pop it. Pop the Mismagius, get ourselves a few more cards. We get Jessie and James as well. This is fantastic, because this means now we can Reset Stamp our opponent down to 3 cards, play Jessie and James, then Night Watch, take a knockout on the Cottony, and our opponent has 0 cards to work with. And in a combo deck like this one, where you realistically need a ton of cards to get going, a 0-card hand is usually not going to do the job. Now, the issue, of course, is that if they do top deck their way into a Fairy Energy, they can just use Toy Box and get everything that they need. But that's hopefully not going to happen. We're going to reduce their hand size here. Jessie and James, they're going to discard 2 cards. It doesn't matter which ones they are. And then we will Night Watch that last card back into the deck. They get rid of Reset Stamp and Pokecom. We're going to get rid of Acro Bike and probably like the Tag Switch. I don't think we realistically need it anymore. And then we'll Night Watch, take the knockout on the Cottony, we'll take a prize. And then our opponent will have to shuffle that Dedenne back into the deck. That's unfortunate. And yeah, and another Reset Stamp here. That's really big because we can potentially, if our opponent draws out of it, or if they get the Toy Box off, we can Reset Stamp them down to a 3-card hand again, and then Night Watch one more time. So, Pokégear here, do they find anything useful? Do they find something to get themselves out of this dead hand? It feels like they've got a supporter to choose from, and they're taking a little bit of extra time here. They've actually got Blues Tactics. So there you go. There's that Reset Stamp. It's going to come in handy immediately here. They'll play down Blues, which will give them an 8-card hand. We'll just stamp them, and then they'll go back down to 3. We'll shuffle 2 of them in. And it's gonna come down to that. So our opponent passes. That's all they can do. And there's their 8-card hand. And we're going to be able to just go, yeah, nah, we don't want you to have that. You can have 3 cards, and we're probably going to just Night Watch here. We're not super worried. We've got Tails as well, so we deal some damage. And we're going to get rid of 2 random cards, a Draw Energy and a Cynthia. They're both pretty good to get rid of, so I'm happy with that. If neither of those cards in our opponent's hand are useful, we might potentially be able to reduce them down to 0 again. And that would mean that we've got an opportunity to not only knock out the Whimsicott, but stop our opponent from playing the game, which is the key, right? We want to stop them playing with this deck, and I think we've done that quite well so far. Got really nothing to work with here. Doesn't look like there's that much going on. The Draw Energy is in hand, though, so they do get to look at another card. They've got another Cottony. Is the last card worth playing? At the moment, it doesn't look like it. Just hanging out here. Is there anything else that they could realistically do? I'm thinking probably not. It means that we're going to be able to Night Watch again and reduce their hand size back down to 0. We can just Night Watch. We flip Tails, we knock it out, but we don't. We get the heads, and the Quick Ball means that that hand is down to 0 again. We're going to be in a position now where realistically our opponent's just top decking for the rest of the game. They've actually got another energy there, a Recycle Energy, but that's not useful for them. We just Night Watch again, and we finally flip Tails and take the knockout, and we're actually in a bit of trouble here. We've only got 3 cards left in deck, so we realistically can't miss too many more turns. We've got the Ordinary Rod, obviously, so it's not that big of a deal, but there could potentially be a way that our opponent wins just through deck out here. They've got 2 cards in hand. One of them's that Recycle Energy, but again, if it's not a supporter, then it's fine by us. We don't realistically mind if our opponent just attaches 1 energy and does nothing else. And yeah, that's all that they can do. They just concede the game. So hey, you know, Trevnoir, when it gets going, if you can get it attacking early in the game, especially against a deck that doesn't have a huge consistency engine, can potentially score you a couple of free wins. Do not expect this to happen every single time. I mean, it might. You might get a good run of 3 or 4 games in a row where you do reduce your opponent's hand down to 0, but it's eventually going to fall apart. Sometimes there are decks that can just deal with not having any cards in hand, so you just need to be careful of those. But reality, it's a pretty strong concept. I really liked it. I had a lot of fun playing it, and I would recommend you check it out as well. Thank you very much for coming along and viewing this video. We always appreciate you coming by. We hope we've done enough to get you to subscribe. You can click on the button that's just up here if you would like to do that. There's always more content from us. There are some videos over here that YouTube thinks that you might like. Feel free to click on one of them, as well as a playlist down the bottom that has all of our Sword and Shield deck profiles so that you can check out more cool decks like this. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at @thesableize_YT. Like the video if you stuck around to the end. I'd really appreciate it. And apart from that, we'll see you all next time from the Sableize. Bye.